welcome to ComplyPlus Presents. This is the first episode of 2025. So we're back, myself and Richard. Today's episode is going to be slightly different to kick off the year. We're going to introduce the speakers, so to speak, and the focus today is going to be on myself. So Richard's going to be asking me some questions about background, about what I'm doing in the company right now, and what the aspirations are for myself in the company moving forward.
Fantastic. Yeah, so I'm Richard. Good to be back after the festive break and resting. How was your break?
Yeah, it was good. We had quite a bit of time off actually because of the way the dates fell. So I think we were off from sort of the 21st up until the 3rd of January. So it was nice seeing family, usual sort of British Christmas stuff, I suppose. Yeah. So how was yours?
Strangely, I actually enjoyed Christmas.
Yeah, you're usually a bit of a bar humbug, so yeah.
Yeah, normally they call me. They normally call me the Grinch, you know. But I really got into it because it was quite different. Normally we go away, but this time we stayed in England and with family and friends in Warwickshire. Then we went to Lancashire, family and friends as well. Big groups. So seeing the children, a lot of them are older now, and but it was really good. It reminded me of Christmas many years ago when I was younger, where we really just used to go for it, you know, feasting, food, music, family get together. So I don't know whether I should say I absolutely enjoyed it, but I did.
You might be here again next year if you say that.
Yeah, but anyway, it's good to be back. So I've got Lewis with me as always, but one thing is that the more we have now gone into this space where we are producing podcasts and explainer videos for our YouTube channel and putting on Apple and the other platforms, even LinkedIn, sharing on LinkedIn. Many people ask me about you actually. Say, who is this Lewis? Some people do know you, but I don't think they know enough about you. So, so when I was talking to the team about what we discussed, I know what we're covering this year in general, but because you're such a crucial part of our focus this year, I think it's important to properly introduce you as an individual and your role in the company. So, Lewis Normoyle, tell me about yourself.
Well, I am born and bred in Coventry. Well, I was born in Birmingham, but grew up in Coventry, lived in Coventry all my life until a couple of years ago. We moved into Staffordshire. So, I was born here, sort of local primary school education, public school, secondary school education, went on into sixth form and into apprenticeships. So, I initially started working on projects at Jaguar Land Rover in Wolverhampton and in Solihull in Birmingham. So my career and my education was sort of geared to sort of an engineering type background. So I was interested in sort of physics, mathematics. They were the sort of qualifications I was going for, and that was how I'd sort of set up what I sort of wanted to do or I was good at. I think there was an element of, you know, what are you good at, but also, you know, what is actually a good career in terms of, you know, good salaries, good opportunities and so on. Obviously in the region here in the Midlands, we have a lot of engineering companies, big companies, worldwide names that have bases here. Also, the local universities offer very good engineering qualifications and degrees and so on. So there was that sort of progression plan. So, I worked there for a couple of years on various different projects, mainly looking at, you know, the infrastructure in the new plant builds that Jaguar were investing in at the time. This was sort of early, just after 2010, 2011 sort of time, where there was a lot of money being pumped into the sector at the time. Then from there, obviously, a bit of a career change. Wasn't quite enjoying things. Ended up going down a different path, really. So, that's when I ended up working in a small family business in construction. I did that for around 6 to 8 months. While I was looking at different opportunities, I was doing some research in evenings or over weekends just to sort of really think what I'm going to do, because I was getting to that age, where you're sort of 19 turning 20, what am I actually going to do for the rest of my life? What am I interested in? Could I have a passion for?
Yeah.
And that's when I stumbled across digital marketing.
Yeah.
Wasn't something that I'd initially thought, I want to be a marketer, because I'm not necessarily into arts and crafts and necessarily making things look good, which is obviously one of the key things with marketing.
Yeah.
But obviously the business side behind it, how it works, how it supports companies, interested me quite a bit. So yeah, the course that I enrolled on was a national qualification at a local college in Leamington Spa. So I ended up going there, but obviously alongside that, as it was an apprenticeship model, you had to find an employer. So that's obviously when I came to you guys. I had various interviews, but the company that resonated with me the most was obviously you guys. I know at the time you guys were into recruitment, health and social care recruitment.
Yeah.
So the business was very different when I joined the business. In fact, back then it was Regal Staffing.
Yeah.
It was even under a different name.
Yeah.
So yeah, obviously I joined you guys. I was doing the qualification. And yeah, that's when I got to know more about the health and social care industry. That's my first taste of it, really.
Yeah.
I started to understand, even the concepts of recruitment. What is recruitment? Obviously, we all know the dictionary definition, but how does a recruitment company work?
Yeah.
How do you get staff? How do you train them, make sure they're compliant, send them to work, manage contracts, all that sort of stuff. Although I was more looking at the marketing side, when I joined you guys, you hear different conversations in the office, you pick things up, you're involved in meetings, and obviously when you're marketing something, you need to understand the product and the business anyway if you're going to do a good job.
Yeah.
So yeah, obviously I joined you guys at an interesting time, because I know the business was in the process of diversifying slightly anyway, because of some of the challenges in recruitment at the time. It was difficult to compete against bigger companies.
Yeah.
There was margins were being lowered or rationalised, every month really. So, the business, your business that I joined had already started that diversification process into sort of looking at compliance and looking at training and knowing that actually the standard and the competition out there in that market was quite small, because I think you guys had already done the research and looked at that sort of area. Obviously, the other point to that was obviously the company was sending staff out to do this training, and what they were coming back with was pretty substandard at the time. So I think that was also probably a brainwave. So yeah, then obviously we got to work on sort of a slightly separate project. I sort of stepped up from just your day-to-day digital marketing responsibilities. We started looking at how we're going to build this business.
Yeah.
We need a name. We need to look at content. We need to look at delivery. How are we going to deliver this training? How are we going to source the content? Or how are we going to even create the content? So I know initially our journey started with sourcing content, because it was the quickest route to market.
Even system at the time. Remember, I think it was around 2013, 14. We used 2 different systems.
Yes.
We had a company in the north.
Yeah.
Who,
that was supplying an LMS.
Then we ended up with another company in the south, in Essex, and then we ended up with another company in Northamptonshire. And I think, do you remember those days? Because there were so many restrictions, because the software, actually, learning management systems at the time, there was nothing in the UK. There were only a handful of companies. Any company you talk to, it led you back to the same developers. And I think the lowest quotation we got was for about 18,000. There was one for 21. There was
to
one
actually
for
build an
to
LMS
actually build an
from
LMS.
scratch,
So never mind. I'm just taking you back to sort of say, look, if you look at the story, part of your journey was you come in and we're a recruitment agency. We're working with the NHS, the prisons, private healthcare, and but actually that sector is now being taken over by huge companies that are very aggressive. They are buying up competitors or hostile takeovers, because we were subject to a hostile takeover and we didn't even realize at the time. And I remember sitting with you and saying, literally within the first few weeks of you joining, say, look, we've got the healthcare recruitment company here, but we're already training people. And I'm thinking the future is in compliance. So instead of competing with these big companies, if we come and offer them training and compliance services, Because when we send people to the same training companies, they're coming back with suboptimal skills. So we're having to train our people even more on some sort of induction training. Then you lose them to the bigger companies because all they do is just offer them £1 more an hour. You can't
they're
compete
gone.
with that
Yeah,
because your margins are so low, and they can lose money in Coventry and Warwickshire or in the Midlands and not care because they'll get it back somewhere. But if they are getting back somebody who has already been assessed, they're fully compliant, and they've got the training, you've done all the hard work only to hand them over.
You've got them ready for someone else ultimately.
Yeah. So I think how come that didn't scare you to say, look, I've just joined this company, and everything that I joined this company for, these guys are telling me that
falling.
there's nothing here. We need to find a new model, and we need to look at, because you never questioned me. I remember that very well. So I sat you down and I said, look, we're doing this right now, but these are the challenges in this area. But I think we should be going in this direction, and I want you to focus on doing the research for the compliance and training. How did that feel?
Yeah, I suppose at the time there was maybe some naivety from me because I wasn't thinking about security. I wasn't thinking, well, actually, if the main business is going to fail, how am I going to get paid? And I wasn't really thinking at that level at the time. I was just thinking, it sounds exciting. It's like basically building a business almost, not quite from scratch because you built the foundations, but it's almost building a new idea from scratch. And I think most people, if they have an interest in business or careers or whatever, would find that interesting, I would imagine. So, it was more just head down, try and prove myself in the business, see what we can do, and see what we can build. I wasn't really thinking too far ahead at the time because I'd just come out of a difficult situation in previous sort of roles, and it sounded exciting. I wasn't really thinking about the things most people think about: security, wages, career progression. Because it could have failed.
It could have failed dismally,
and then we could all not be sat here now. But luckily, it didn't. So like you say, we got to work. We had to do it the hard way. We had to play hardball, like you say, dealing with suppliers. Because the route to market, we had to license content. We had to license a system. There was no way we could afford, like you said, some of them quotations we were getting. And we didn't really have the technical people internally to build one at that time. Obviously, we went on to find those people, and we have those people now, thankfully. But it was a challenge. You're paying commission rates every time you sell something. You have to bear that in mind. Obviously quality issues, because if there was a quality issue, you couldn't actually deal with it yourself. I think that's one of the biggest luxuries we have now, where if people do have concerns, we don't have to answer to anyone. We can look at it. We've got some outside people who do the quality checks for us, but other than that, we can make the changes. Obviously, back then, we just had to send emails to an inbox that usually wouldn't get a response, or a phone line that would not answer. So, it was challenging to build a business on the back of that. And then obviously when you did get the odd client who maybe wanted to buy at sort of enterprise or corporate level, where they're looking for 500-600 users or thousands of users, you always had to go to the company you're sourcing from,
the owner system,
and almost do a partnership with them to get your client. But then obviously we quickly learned when we did that with a couple of organisations that the likelihood is when this contract needs to be renewed, or when these guys need this training again, they're not going to come directly to us.
Because they know the source.
Because they know the source. And they know that we're almost like middlemen in this situation. So, it was challenging. But I think that's what also spurred us on, not just to offer the e-learning or the virtual training, was also to offer face-to-face, which obviously, again, it's hard to build on when you don't necessarily have any clients initially. But obviously, because of the networks we'd been in from recruitment, we managed to get a few jobs. And then as our marketing improved, our brand exposure was there. People started knowing who we were. We became a bit of a name, particularly in the south of England initially. I noticed we were very strong in the south and still are. And we then started doing some of the face-to-face training. But again, the margins are challenging at times. You've got to pay the trainer, you've got to pay their hotel fees. obviously we
The
looked
travel
at,
as well.
travel, subsistence. So we looked at obviously different models where, if you get a trainer in this region who doesn't have to travel too far, but again, finding the right people to deliver it in the way you want to deliver the training can also be challenging. Luckily, we have found some people now that align with our sort of values, but it can be challenging. So all that time really was, it was just about pushing and pushing and pushing and surviving in a way. But then, as well as we were doing that, we also had to have the side part of the business where we were trying to build our own things, because we knew that wasn't sustainable. And luckily we managed to get out of that vicious circle after about, I think, 18 months. We actually had a prototype for the new system, which at the time we decided to call LearnPack. LearnPack LMS. So I think you initially come up with the name and the concept behind it, and you defined why we should call it LearnPack, and obviously we then ended up actually registering the
company as LearnPack Systems.
As LearnPack Systems with Company's House. So the LearnPack project was also interesting because even for me, I ended up learning a lot of new skills. Even some basic coding, but also database management, UI, understanding user interfaces.
Even servers.
Servers now.
We're talking to Rackspace and our friend James. James really did give us...
he was...
That core of the system actually would never have worked without his contribution.
And even, there's the security side as well that he's implemented in our business. So building that system on the side was important, and then also yourself with some of your research team starting to build just basic content. Then obviously even going into the market to look at how are we going to author that content, because you can't just put Word documents or
into
PowerPoints
a system and call it training.
So
instructional design, because it was you and Yasmin at the time, so literally 3 people in a room. I'm credit also to Korean Business Solutions, working with Puneet and Sachin and Naveen. They found us a team in India with Vishal leading on the project. It was really crucial because we could then build a system that we had control of. So you control the content, so that means the quality side of things. You can do your own peer reviews, get accreditation. We had no control when we were using other people's systems. But also, if there were any system glitches, I remember our first contract, actually. We lost our first contract for e-learning.
Yes.
Because...
relatively quickly, actually.
We got it relatively quickly, and we lost it almost immediately because the glitches, because we didn't know how to test the system properly.
No.
It's one thing to develop things, and then you think they're working. Then when you give it to a customer, then... I remember when the problem was fixed, it was such a minor problem. And then it drills into you that testing is the most important thing before you deploy a software product. But you sort of start to think, hang on, did we make a mistake rushing to develop our own system? But the other side was not sustainable.
No.
To keep licensing from other people, then they're basically using you to get business.
Of course they are.
If that company wants to add an extra 100 people, you have to negotiate again. You have to go and buy credits. So... if I go back to sort of those early days, because I was doing most of the implementation as far as face-to-face training initially.
Yes.
And you were doing a lot of the digital marketing, but also the customer relationship management. Do you remember those early days? Not having worked in the sector that long, you had never worked in health and social care anyway, but even the recruitment side, I think you only did it for about 2 months.
Yeah.
How did that feel? How did you get to grips with what customers needed to know, making sure that we do a proper needs analysis? Do you remember those days?
Well, I think like you say, once we'd set up that initial part of the training business, my role from just being a digital marketing apprentice evolved quickly, and even my titles changed. Like I say, I then went more heavily into commercial, particularly while we were licensing off other companies, because we didn't need to worry about IT, we didn't need to worry about systems. We had that, we were paying for that luxury, but we needed customers, we needed revenue. So all of a sudden my marketing role turned into almost a marketing role where I'm looking at sales, account management, and you almost had to quickly learn. I know we did a lot of sort of one-to-one sessions. We worked in the office together quite a lot. I tried to sort of pick things up of my own sort of initiative in a way. I'd read things or in the evening, you might pick up a paper or something and just read about things, listening to the news, all those sort of things sort of helped. But yeah, I think once you understood the basic regulation, what do people need to do?
Yeah.
What is mandatory? What is statutory? Then a lot of it fell into place because, you're then speaking to people with the upper hand in a way because you know what they need. Some of these people would come to us and not know what they need.
Yeah.
They'd need that training needs analysis support. They'd need to have that initial sort of consultation before they even knew what training they needed. But we, as a business, armed ourselves with that. We wrote a lot of blogs. We wrote a lot, we were producing a lot of content considering the team we had at the time was relatively small. So like I say, my digital marketing role quickly became commercial. I was still able to finish the digital marketing qualification and then went on to do higher levels up to sort of level 4, level 5 sort of standard in the end. But a lot of it was still relatable because I was still doing things that were marketing-based roles, but there was also that wing of dealing with customers, understanding customers, what looks good for customers, how can we help customers, how can we look after these customers. And in the end, we were building a very good client book. And I think that's what strived us to work with Corian and some of the other suppliers, even support from someone like James, who works on big NHS sort of systems himself, to build a system of our own, to sort of say, why should we keep having these challenges? We're the ones getting these clients. We're the ones actually helping these clients.
We understood the needs as well because some of the other guys were actually feeding off our requests to better their systems.
We were almost improving other people's product because we'd say this client has asked for this, or could we have this at a higher level because their nurses now need to do this. But because some of those people weren't maybe working as closely in the industry, and we also had the recruitment background, I think there's a factor of things. But that quickly got me sort of up to speed on what people actually need. And then you start actually breaking down services, healthcare services.
Adult social
care, even then moving into sort of the Ofsted, the early years and so on. Obviously something we've gone into more in the last couple of years here. But you start understanding, you start speaking the language, and then you start, like I say, you get a bit of respect from these clients. As long as you do the usual good customer service things, you're responsive, you put on a good show. I know obviously when you were leading on the training and some of the other trainers, everyone we sent, there was always pretty positive feedback. We got more bookings, so it must have been the people must have liked the experience. They must have liked the delivery, the format, the overall experience of using the brand. And then, the fact that we could then have our own system with our own content that we knew was of a good standard, and we know it was up to date, because I think that was one of the other challenges with e-learning, making sure it's up to date as regulation and legislations change. We felt we had that full sort of blended learning experience. So as a training business at the time, which is obviously what we were perceived as, and that's where the Mandatory Training Group name sort of originated from. We had everything. It took 4 or 5 years, I think, to build, but we had everything. And then obviously we got different people into the team. My role was still pretty dispersed across different areas, but really the main roles were in sort of the commercial side. And we got by. We were growing the business. Revenue was increasing, not necessarily at the highest rate, but we were improving and we were retaining customers. At the time, like I say, we were growing the team here in the UK. We also invested in other teams,
more teams to support,
teams across the world to support, to give us that sort of coverage as well. Even from a content side, our library just kept expanding. Even with the system, once we got the basic core features of an LMS, we started looking at, well, what other reports can we give? What other things on this learning management system will be useful for our sort of customers? So you're then tapping into other compliance areas. You're then looking into audit. You're looking into real-time reporting. And obviously on that journey, the more prominent we became, we had to build relationships with key people like the CPD
Certification
Service, awarding bodies like Training Qualifications UK. We built a lot of different allegiances. We became a supplier, an NHS approved supplier. we were working closely with Skills for Care, with Skills for Health, and still do work with them in some capacity now. I know they've changed their
The way they do
models
things,
slightly. Yeah. So, yeah, really, it was a proper growth from almost nothing to a basic sort of business where you're sort of licensing things off other people and acting as like a middleman, to then growing. And like I say, the business was very focused on being a training company
Yeah.
for several years, really. And in a way, we're still perceived by most as a training company. But obviously, 2.5 years ago, I'd say now, we started looking at what else can we do in this area, because a bit like with the recruitment, our industry then became, particularly during COVID, where things had to be done differently. People were looking at more digital online solutions. You couldn't be in the same room as people. So the way training was delivered, particularly in a heavily regulated sector like health and social care, was completely turned on its head.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, our nice little training business, you know, with the LMS, the face-to-face delivery, the open centres, it all became much of a muchness. A lot of people come onto the market. Even the entry point, like you say, for setting up an LMS became really cheap, considering the investment we had to make.
Yeah.
So you sort of look now and you sort of think, you know, it's so much more affordable to actually do it now. But obviously there's still a lot of things you have to do. It's not an easy job, but, you know, actually getting a basic system set up is a lot cheaper than it was.
Yeah.
And a lot easier, like you say. So, yeah, that's when we sort of come up with the idea of ComplyPlus.
Yeah.
And from a personal perspective, that's obviously when the business had got to that point where we needed to be have more of a corporate setup. You know, our teams had grown. We had lots of different staff, contractors here in the UK, more employees here in the UK. And that's obviously then when I went onto the board and became a shareholder as well. So, you know, initially I started, it was a continuation of my commercial role, but I became a commercial director ultimately. And in the last 18 months, I've moved into operations because it suited
the skill set as well.
Yeah, the skill set and the configuration of our team, because I'd had that. I think at the beginning of the business, I'd had that widened understanding of dealing with suppliers, dealing with the content, dealing with customers, looking at the marketing. You know, I had that rounded understanding of how our business operates and where the efficiencies are, where things need to be improved. So it made sense for me to move into that space. And obviously with the team we had at the board level, it made sense for other individuals as well to take up their roles that they now have. But yeah, obviously when I went into the operations director role, that's when we started thinking about diversifying from the training business as well. So yeah, like I said, I think that was around two years ago, maybe a bit longer.
I think, COVID disrupted the plans.
Yes.
But I think right at the beginning of 2020, the idea was, because we still had quite a lot of business on the face-to-face training. So in 2019, if I remember well, we had started scaling down, promoting blended learning instead. Because traditionally in the NHS was that I used to work in the NHS, so you go and sit in the lecture theatre, somebody comes once a year and they just talk at you. They've got slides. The health and safety guy comes in, usually a guy, they talk about health and safety, fire safety, the same jokes every year, infection control. Then you go and do your practical for moving and I can't remember how often it was being done. And, one of the challenges at the beginning was that although the NHS was moving to do some of the subjects online, a lot of organizations still preferred face-to-face because for many reasons, many people didn't even believe that e-learning was any use at all in the sector, even for those subjects that are more theoretical. And some people wanted the efficiency of it. If I'm a compliance manager in a care home or a recruitment agency or a hospital, what I want is, if I say 20 people in a room, then you come and train them that day. Then I've got all my 20 certificates and I'm ticking a box, because training was very much like box ticking.
Yeah.
But the time we got to 2018, 2019, we realized actually that some of the competitors had more training centers around the country. They were better equipped. It was very draining to continue delivering. So by the time we go to 2019, we started scaling back. Okay, look, let's do train the trainer. Then we build capacity within those organizations. And then they can use e-learning for the theoretical subjects and the theory relating to the practical subject. Then you come and do the practical. So I think by the time we go to 2020, if I remember well, we were already transitioning. And we lost some clients that didn't want the e-learning at all.
Yeah, we did lose some valued clients because they didn't want the change.
Yeah.
They were happy with the way things were. But
then a few months down the line, COVID forces them to
go the way we wanted.
The way we were suggesting. So it's almost like you foresaw that it was never planned. But for me, I'd like to hear from you as well. Because when I talk to people that know us, they say, "Oh, you and Lewis have worked together for a long time, and you guys are doing this now. The business is growing." Even people that have left the business, when you talk to them, like, "Wow, you guys have really taken this all the way." Because we used to talk about some of the things that we're doing now is as if like, wow, at some point in the future, but now obviously we're in the future and we're doing a lot of those things. Yeah. That working with decision makers in health and social care who usually do not trust people who are not like them. Like now, even when I go into certain meetings or certain conferences and workshops, the moment people realize that you do not have an active NHS role, because I still do some of the research work and all that, but I'm not in operations in the NHS. It's almost like, oh, you're working in the private sector. So I have that experience of having come from the NHS, but you had never done any of that. What is your experience of working with decision makers? Has anything surprised you about the sector, or I don't know what your expectations were at the beginning, but actually when you're now deep in, you talk to some people at director level sometimes and senior decision makers who are looking at their learning development needs, who are looking at different solutions. How is that for you?
Yeah, I think overall it's been a pretty good experience. Like I say, you can learn obviously from a lot of these people, whether it's even just email exchanges or it's calls. But yeah, every call is always interesting because you're trying to sort of analyze, okay, what do these people, what are they looking for when they're looking for a company to help with this? They're investing in the brand as well as the product. Yeah. But there's also an element, like you say, of box ticking and things that they've got to do. Yeah. So yeah, I think like you say, there's been very different experiences. I think sometimes the thing that shocks me is obviously some people are still a bit unsure on what they want. There's a bit of fishing. There's a bit of almost free consultancy as well, where they think, if I get a Zoom call with the team, Lewis and his team, we can find out a bit more of what we actually should be doing, or maybe get some ideas on how we're going to implement some of these changes. When CQC are changing and COVID has changed a lot of things, people need almost that help. And if they can get it for nothing, people are going to try and do it, and you can't blame them for that. So yeah, I think overall it's been a positive experience. But even the way people ask for our different services, whether they are just coming for your usual mandatory training, whether they're looking for something a bit more bespoke, whether they're looking for something on ComplyPlus now where it's like to do with train the trainer or training management system, a learning management system. They're looking for some sort of compliance tool or whatever angle they're coming at. There's always a different way in which people are asking and a different way in which people get to the end result of actually what they want. Yeah. So I think, I think that's the way I'd say it. Like I say, that there's been a few surprises where you sort of think, God, you'd think someone in that position would know about some of these things, but that's not always the case. Yeah. So you realise there's still maybe gaps in knowledge or information management really about how things should be done from the regulators and things like that. But then there's also the side of learning and getting ideas from these people, actually knowing some of the challenges that's going on in some of these sectors or some of these workplaces and environments to sort of say, okay, so that's actually a problem. Then it gives us ideas as a business actually how we can come up with solutions. Because, ultimately the way we want to be looked at is a solutions company. We're not here to make life difficult for our clients. We want to make things as easy as possible. We want to make compliance something that they don't need to worry about. Yeah. That's really our mission, really.
Yeah. So on the back of that, you were coming from an engineering background with Jaguar Land Rover. You had worked in construction as well. So there's a high level of awareness on health and safety And they also get training probably at a much higher level than we got in clinical environments for health and safety and compliance in general. Those are really crucial skills for me. When I was looking at your CV originally, it was, oh, that's interesting. Where is he living? Why is he living in Jaguar Land Rover? Why has he moved from this sector? But I could see actually the fact that you had an awareness of risk assessments, risk mitigation. So for me, those are some of the skills that I found interesting. Have they been? I'm sure they've been of use to you as you are doing needs analysis, because it's the same, isn't it? When you're doing risk assessments, what is the environment like, the hazards,
what are the hazards,
who may be
the level
harmed,
of risk,
and what do you need to do to mitigate that risk, and kind of remove all the risks, but make people aware. So how did that help you as you settled in this business?
Well, yeah, as you can imagine, in those sectors, health and safety is paramount, and ensuring the safety of people. It's one of the biggest things that on those sort of sites that that's where a lot of the budget goes to.
Yeah.
So yeah, it gives you that awareness of the importance that training isn't also just about stopping risks. Yeah. It's about enabling people to learn, be more aware, but also be more effective in their role. Yeah. Health and safety, it is about risk mitigation. It is about making sure you do things properly, but there's also theories behind that that can make you better at your job, more aware, more astute in those environments. And I think even for us, that's how we try and create our content, whether we're delivering it in person, in a webinar, face-to-face, on a via a learning management system, or even as a video. Everything we try and do, it's not just about ticking the box. Don't put this wire across the floor because someone could trip over. We try and go a bit more into sort of the theory behind why some of this training is useful. And like you said about building capacity, that's what it's about. Making sure people know the standard, the knowledge, as well as understanding obviously risk. So I think that background does help you because it makes you understand the seriousness of it, but also the other side of it where actual training is there to develop people. It's there to improve people, usually in that particular role, but even in life, it can help you. That's why we do it. That's why people spend money on it. But obviously in health and social care, there are things that have to be done. So there is an element of this is mundane. I don't really want to be here to do it. But it definitely helped. And even some of the qualifications I'm doing now for health and safety, they give you even higher level awareness.
Yes,
sort of
when you're dealing with decision makers, then you have to, But because when in health and social care, there's a lot of discussion around human factors. Like you're saying, people being complacent or maybe not taking training seriously, policies and procedures. And those are some of the things that have informed the development of ComplyPlus to sort of say, look, it's not just a training company anymore. It's not just a learning management system. We have to build the training management system. We have to put templates, policies and procedure templates, and people can upload documents. People can, and then even things like policies and procedures. What is the evidence that people have actually gone through the induction properly? So, for me, working with you, considering your background, that really helped the development of ComplyPlus because we were on the same wavelength to say it doesn't matter whether you're on a construction site, you're in a care home with people with dementia, or you're in an A&E department. Everywhere, actually, that there are inherent risks that are there. But obviously, trying to convince the market, because a lot of people would have several training companies, maybe 2 or 3 e-learning providers. They've got a system for policies and procedures. They've got health and safety, 5, 6 systems when we did the research. And initially, there was a lot of reluctance to sort of say, can you put everything in one system? But we kept thinking from 2021, I think, that the more you think about it, actually, we need to
makes sense.
Integrate things into one place. When you look at the diffusion of innovations, some people get it straight away.
Yeah.
Right? Think, this makes sense. And I can name quite a few that got it straight away and signed up straight away. Then a few more who need a demo, maybe a little bit more convincing. But then in the end, they realize, actually, you're saying I'm going to save a lot of money. You're saying we're going to be more efficient. You're saying we're going to have one login and I can assign all these things and I can upload documents. You're going to send me reminders. Oh, this makes sense. The next bit now is traditionally where the challenge is to say, how do you convince the next 10% so that you can get to that tip? How has that been? Does theory play out in practice in the same way?
I think it does. Yeah, when you look at the concept of diffusion of innovations, I think it's very accurate for this software that we've launched, because it is a software product. And integration makes sense, because why use multiple suppliers to achieve the same thing, or have different contracts, have different contact people, when you could just have one contact person? And that's been our message. Whether that message has got through well enough is something for us and our marketing teams to discuss. But yeah, it has been challenging to get people away from systems. Obviously, there are different factors at play. A lot of people have signed lengthy contracts with these other people. They've got a lot of data locked into these systems, and to just completely drop one solution and move to another is not as easy as it may sound. It's a bit like saying to you, with all your Apple products, to leave Apple. Would you consider it? So I think, that next 10% is going to be harder. Obviously, we've tried to tackle that, like you referred to there, that tipping point. How do we tip the scales in our favour? We've broken down ComplyPlus. Rather than it just being one software product that you subscribe and you almost get exclusive access to everything, you now can just get the bits that you want. And you can upgrade, you can downgrade, you can sign 3-year agreements, 2-year agreements, 1-year agreements. We have flexible payments. We've tried a lot of things, and I think over the last quarter, the numbers that I was seeing in our management meetings were very positive in terms of new sign-ups, but also renewals. Because, like you say, we've been working on this sort of product for 3 years now. People are getting to that point of, are they going to renew? And that's almost a really good indicator as to sort of say how useful was your product, or compared to what else is out there on the market, how good is it? But our renewal rate was pretty solid for a relatively new product on the market. So we've broken things down, we've changed the messaging, we've tried to add more value into the system, particularly for existing subscribers, to sort of say, look, we don't want it to be a stale product. We're constantly looking at other things we can add. We're constantly using customer feedback to improve things. So like you say, it's been really interesting. Even some of the exciting stuff we've got ready for this quarter with the training management system in particular, something which is quite unique on the market based on the research we've done. All these things we feel are going to add value and most importantly, make compliance a lot more seamless. And I'm looking forward to launching that product properly next month.
So what I've realized the many years we've spent in this sector is you have to keep evolving. It's got to be incremental changes. Because I think when we started out, we used to try to get a perfect product, and even the launch. But actually, after a while, you realize actually that you're never going to get a perfect product, because like even now, the way systems are developed, we started with SCORM files and tin can API, I think it was, and the NHS were using Moodle at the time. The universities were using Moodle at the time. I used to do courses, and you had to sit by a computer, laptop or desktop computer, to do courses on the NHS England system. I think it was e-learning for healthcare at the time when I was working in the NHS. And everything was slow. Things would crash. But then all of a sudden, our first foray into this area was SCORM and Tincan. And you can do that even on a mobile phone. That was 2014, I think, 2014, 15, when we launched the first system, end of 2014 to 2015. And now, when you look at the different ways you can develop courses, content, policies and procedures, gamification that is now in there, the different things that would have cost you a lot of money before, even text-to-speech, is now standard. And the design elements, drag and drop, you can design beautiful content. But one thing obviously is that even people are talking about VR, AI, and all that sort of stuff. Does the market appreciate actually that these things, although some of them seem abundantly available, they're everywhere now, quite ubiquitous, there's still quite a huge cost of instructional design and putting this content out and making it more suited to the modern user. Because if you go on any social media platforms, there's so much going on there, isn't it? And people expect that sort of usability as well. How has that been? Because you're still, obviously, being operations director now, you're more involved than ever in the systems and then the integrations and all these updates. How has that been, and how do the market perceive it? Are they willing to pay for what it's worth? Because we were talking about box ticking before. If I just want to tick a box, I don't really care about all this other stuff.
No, you do. You go off the shelf, as we sort of call it internally, isn't it? Off the shelf purchasing. I think, look, we've had a few very big companies come to us and they want something built almost from scratch.
Yeah.
They have an idea, they have a goal, they have an aim. You know, they have the initial things you need to build some form of training program or training course. But then when you start actually looking at detail and, like you say, these different things that now people expect in these online courses, you know, like you were saying, some of them there, gamification, highly interactive, prerequisites, you know, end of module quizzes and different ways of testing people now as well. It's not just true or false or A, B, C, D. There's you've even got like heat maps and all this sort of, you know, all these sort of things now. But yeah, building from scratch, there is a big shock to people when you finally
look at the
build
pricing.
everything. When you look at actually what they want compared to how much they're willing to spend, I think there is,
a mismatch.
even with big companies that are well funded, there's a high mismatch. Yeah. But we to remain competitive, we have to, like you say, keep evolving. Even the software we use to author our courses, you know, we're always trying to upgrade that. We're trying to better it. We're trying to make our courses stand out on the market. From obviously more the e-learning perspective. But if we don't do that, then we'll be quickly swamped by other people. But there's obviously a limit to how fancy and how sort of shiny and thingy you make the courses. That's been an interesting journey. We've had some really interesting discussions, although a lot of them didn't go anywhere. They were interesting people, like you say, to speak to. And even now, you know, we're discussing different types of products, you know, like obviously CQC have made a big thing about evidence logging, and that's one key thing that we added to ComplyPlus in the last 12 months.
We already had it, but people didn't want to use it.
Yeah.
So sometimes actually you develop something
There's a tool there for
knowing that it's important, but because there was no regulatory requirement, people didn't care. Then all of a sudden you say, oh yeah, you know, we've got this upload feature.
And then the light bulb goes. And
then like, oh,
okay.
But we've had it for about 4 years, I think. 4 years.
Yeah, we had it in some form or another. But I think in the last 12 months since the single assessment framework came into play, we've really pushed that, and people are making use of it, and it's working well. So I think, and then like I say, for 2025 moving forward, we have some exciting things. You talked about innovation, you talked about evolving. I think we're doing all those things, and hopefully we can keep offering good value to customers, and we see where the year takes us. But I think we've got quite a clear plan with what we want to do with the software, what we want to do with ComplyPlus. We've got a clear plan on where we want to go. We want to keep revolutionising things in the industry,
So for me, I think probably the last point I want to touch on, when you think about that incremental improvements to the system. For example, the upload feature is now being used widely now for the single assessment framework.
Yes.
And because it's already there, it's integrated within the system, then it means that you have one dashboard that you can use, but also adding the training management system together with the learning management system, you can then manage the learning and development elements of the business. From the moment you hire a person, what certificates do they already have? You can upload those to their profile. And then it ticks to sort of say, look, we've got this. Okay, this is expiring in 6 months. What is the induction training that they need? So it's for me, again, because whenever I talk to people, I do talk to a lot of company owners, directors, and even people, decision makers within NHS and other public bodies. You explain that, and you ask them, and they're quite surprised, almost like, oh, okay, I've never thought about that actually. I always thought that you could manage all that within a learning management system and say, okay, yes, a lot of the features that they do work together, but the features of the training management systems are different. It allows you to even the design and even because if you have different suppliers, you're doing your own in-house training. Maybe you're procuring from a local authority or commissioners want you to do something different. Everything can be in one place. So the idea that you have folders on a shelf somewhere, if you've got everything in one place, then it really does help not only for the regulatory compliance management, but also efficiencies within the businesses. You don't miss things out because all of these things are actually part of the evidence. If you talk about the CQC single assessment framework, the way things are going, and even with Ofsted as well, any of these regulators now, there's now need for organizations to self-police, and you can't do that effectively without good systems. And for me, that's the biggest improvement that I've seen. Yes, there are many other providers who were just providing templates of policies and procedures, but what use are they without clear instructions on how to implement that policy? Again, those are the additional resources that I've worked on with the team to say, look, if we put this in, and even for you, when you went for the CQC, we went for some training related to the governance and all that sort of stuff. How has that come together? And do customers actually appreciate that? Because I know you get involved even with the demos and getting, especially the bigger clients, to do the needs analysis properly. Do they appreciate the need for the integration and also these incremental changes as well? Are they using them properly? Or they're still just taking the system, use the bits that they think are important?
I think it's probably more the latter. I think there are a lot of people that have like you were saying earlier, diffusion of innovations that have just got it. You see how some people are using the system, and actually they give us ideas to sort of say, oh, okay, that's an interesting way of using it. That's a good way of maximising really the features of the product. But there's still a lot of people that have even subscribed to things and they don't even use some of the features. So they're paying for it, but they're not using it.
Properly.
Or, they'll almost come back to you in a few months and say, I thought we got this with the system, and you have to turn around and say, you did. We went through it in the onboarding. It's all there. There's user guides. All the information is there. But, people, particularly if they're in a period of maybe they've just had an audit or there's been a big incident in the workplace or there's a big change in the sector, people panic and then they rush to people like us to try and get a solution. So, or they get a bit hysterical. They forget actually what they've subscribed to when it's running out, I'd say it's more the latter, but again, that's where as a business we're trying to improve, to highlight these things, to even without the way we look after accounts now, we want to check in, we want to make sure everyone's maximising all the tools. Because if they're not, then they're not getting the best out of the system.
Exactly.
And they may decide the system's not for them when actually a lot of the things they need are just sitting there waiting for them to use. Yeah.
Fantastic. So our first episode for 2025, ComplyPlus presents. I was talking to my colleague Louis Normoyle, our Chief Operating Officer, and hearing his story, how we started working together more than 10 years ago, and how we've built this business to where it is now. It's been a long journey, exciting journey, sometimes challenging journey, but we believe that it's been worthwhile, and that's why we keep pushing and getting strong. So we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you, Liz.
Yeah, thank you.